to your message, discuss ways to satisfy your audience's information needs, and later on, identify 6 elements to consider when choosing a channel and medium. Then we will learn how to relate with our audience and specify 6 ways to establish good relationship with audience. Explain how to use you attitude when writing messages and give examples of bias-free language and explain its importance. Basically, that's what will wrap up this chapter. So we may begin now. The first job is to write effective business messages. What we mean by effective business messages? Effective business messages should be purposeful, audience centered, and concise. Let's first focus on what we mean by purposeful. There is a purpose as to why you are writing a business message. Every business message is written either to solve a problem, inform or request information, or provide information, or request resources with which we will accomplish a goal, or with which we will perhaps further the objective of the organization or business in question. Next comes audience centered approach. We need to find out the needs and wants of the audience. We need to learn about their point of views and know about their backgrounds. Only then we can write messages which can meet their need and which reflects their preferences. Lastly, in the world of business, we respect the manager's time or other people's time, generally speaking, which means the messages should be brief, to the point, and further the efficiency and effectiveness of the business in question. Unnecessary details and irrelevant points should not be covered. While we make sure that the messages are concise, we also must ensure that they don't detract from the real purpose of the message. So, the message or the subject that we are covering should be conveyed properly, and it should be detailed enough that the problem we plan to solve or hope to resolve is actually done by the message. Let's move on to the next slide. Here we see before us the 3-step writing process. This slide will recur again and again in this course, and therefore you should familiarize yourselves very well with this slide. All the writing, or I should say all the chapters that involve writing, essentially invokes the 3-step writing process. And therefore, regardless of what you write, either a letter or a memo or a report, these 3 simple basic steps have to be kept in mind and followed. Now let's look at the different steps. First comes planning. We want to inform, persuade, and motivate our audience with our business message. And that's why we need to make sure that the reason why we are writing the message that's come across correctly, which is why you need to analyze the situation. All right. This means, what information do I need to share with my audience? what information will inform them or persuade them or motivate them to act. So the topic on which I am writing, I should find more information about the topic. Investigate the topic essentially refers to that. For example, if I were to respond to a customer's claim letter, let's say he has purchased a refrigerator and now the compressor of the refrigerator has is not working. He comes with a claim. I need to find out about product warranty, sale conditions, things like that before I can write that letter to him. Finally, adapt to the audience means what format will the audience actually accept. For example, I may a letter format when I'm responding to a claim letter may work best to inform um, the audience given the situation. So, and probably my message will be understood better by the audience if I am using a letter format. The right degree of formality that is required on this occasion will be served by the letter format. So, adapt to the audience essentially refers to things like that. So, that's planning. Next comes writing. This is actually an easy one. This means writing actually means narrating your ideas by writing sentences and paragraph. At this point, you actually commit words and sentences to the paper. Of course, these days we don't use pen and paper that much. If you are using word processor, it essentially means typing the letter, or putting one word after another and creating the sentence and one sentence after another and creating the paragraph and actually writing. So the first draft will be prepared by you during this stage. Next comes completing. At this point, we will take a one step backward and look at our first draft. We will re-examine the letter or memo, whatever we had written, and figure out if the contents, style, and readability is correct. We must edit if there are grammatical mistakes, punctuation, or syntax errors, or even format errors. Then we must put the message in the form in which the audience will receive it, which means if it is a letter, we will prepare it as a letter or prepare it as a memo, things like that. Finally, we will proofread the message. That means we will look at spelling mistakes, typing errors, mechanical errors, punctuation errors, those things. Lastly, some final words about the three-step writing process. When it comes to utilizing the three-step writing process, we must finish the process within a specific time. How to utilize that time? Say we are supposed to write a letter to our customer and we have allotted ourselves 1 hour. If that is the case, then half of that time should be spent on planning. Then a quarter of that time or 15 minutes should be spent on writing. And lastly, a little over a quarter of an hour, okay, or a quarter of the time should be spent on completing. So let's say you should spend about 20 minutes on completing the letter. So that's how you use or apply the three-step writing process to any writing that you may want. The next slide is called Analyze Your Purpose. All business messages have a general purpose. For example, a business letter to the supplier may want to inform, it may want to persuade, or it may request collaboration, right? The supplier may be asked to collaborate with a manufacturer to which the supplier supplies, let's say, raw materials like cement or you know iron ingots or clinker, something like that. But remember, each message, while has a general purpose, it also has a very specific purpose. For example, you may want the supplier to significantly reduce the price of the raw material that they are supplying to your company, which is, I said earlier, a manufacturing operation. But before we think about the specific purpose, we must also ask a few questions and analyze our purpose in order to ensure whether the purpose is worth pursuing. These questions you must ask yourself. Is your purpose realistic? Let's take this example. If it involves a radical shift in action, then it is better to go slowly. Think about the supplier. The supplier in this instance may not be willing to or able to drastically reduce the price of the product. If that is the situation, then maybe just hinting at the benefits of price reduction at this point would be realistic, and asking him to drastically reduce the price would be unrealistic. So you need to look at the realism of your purpose. The second question is this the right time to send the message or broach the purpose? Is the company that supplies you the stable enough to concentrate and work on responding to your message? Can they respond to your message at this point in time? If they are not very stable, maybe this demand for price reduction at this point in time cannot be entertained. If the company is undergoing change or is in financial turmoil, like the case is now for most companies in the COVID-19 situation, you know, you might want to wait, and when the company is stable and in a better financial situation, maybe then you can send the message for price reduction. Third way to test your purpose is the right person delivering the message? Sometimes a manager or a person in a superior position should deliver the message, and only because that improves the acceptability of the message and it can get better results. So that way, who delivers the message can be quite important. And the supplier in question in this example may not actually um, take a message coming from a junior officer like you seriously. Lastly, you should ask this question: is my purpose acceptable to the organization? Which means your own organization. You may be aggressive and want to um, compel the supplier to reduce the price drastically. But on the other hand, your organization, the company for which you are working, may have other priorities. They may want to keep a friendly, non-threatening relationship with the supplier, and their priority may actually be to retain a goodwill with the supplier and not put pressure on them to reduce cost. Thus, your purpose and the company's purpose may not actually be same and not acceptable to the organization for which you are working. So these are the four questions you should ask yourself. Questions with regard to realism, timing, delivery, and acceptability as you analyze your purpose.